Well, hey, good morning to you. We are out at the ocean. It's a beautiful, beautiful day. Partly cloudy, partly sunny, kind of perfect. It's like I wish I had a coat on when the sun goes behind the clouds, but I'm happy I don't when the sun comes out. So we'll just kind of hope the sun comes out here for a little bit. But either way, it's a beautiful, beautiful day. Love the ocean. And this is where God has me. I know it sounds strange to some of you, but I know my Father's voice. And as we've been going through the book of Matthew verse by verse, because the church is completely ignorant to the teachings of Jesus Christ, just open your eyes and there it is, they're ignorant to the teachings of Jesus Christ. That we understand it. And as we've gone through this verse by verse, God just has me doing something different depending on what the scenario is in this book. And we've hit that place where the multitudes have followed Jesus into the wilderness, and he has me by the ocean during this season. And what I have learned is, even as Jesus, his crowds were so big, he had to come out of the synagogues, and he's just got multitudes following him in the wilderness, and he sits on a mountain with his disciples and begins to teach. And it's the things that he says, they're comforting words, and they're good words. They fill the heart with love and kindness and hope. But the reality is there's much deeper meanings to it. It's not only to make us feel good. It's so we can change our behavior specifically. So we're just going to pick it up where we left off. Matthew 5, starting verse 1. And seeing the multitudes, he went up on a mountain. And when he was seated, his disciples came to him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Last time we talked about mercy. It's incredibly important that you understand what it is Jesus is trying to teach with mercy, because you get mercy as much as you give mercy. It's very clear. When you ask God, forgive me the way I forgive others, he says yes to that. So now we're going to talk about being pure in heart, because when you're pure in heart, according to Jesus, you shall see God. So what does this mean? So I'm going to start in Psalm 24, verse 1. The earth is the Lord's and all its fullness, the world of those who dwell therein. For he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the waters. Who may ascend into the hill of the Lord, or who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to an idol, nor sworn deceitfully, he has received blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. So be very clear that if you're wondering, well, who can ascend up to heaven? Who can go to heaven? Who? Well, according to some, it's those with a pure heart. Now, just like mercy and just like the other things where it says if you don't do these things that there's punishment, be very clear. I'm not preaching salvation through a pure heart. What I'm preaching is if your relationship with Jesus Christ is real, it's real, then you're going to be filled with the Spirit, and the Spirit is going to instill in you a pure heart. So it's important you to understand, well, what is a pure heart? And how do I know I got a pure heart? Like, how's all that work? And that's really what this episode is about. 1 Timothy 1:3 says, As I urged you when I went to Macedonia, remain in Ephesus, that you may charge some that they teach no other doctrine, nor give heed to fables and endless genealogies, which cause disputes rather than godly edification, which is in faith. Now the purpose of the commandment is love from a pure heart, from a good conscience, and from sincere faith, from which some, having strayed, have turned aside to idle talk, desiring to be teachers of the law, understanding neither what they say nor the things which they affirm. But we know that the law is good if one uses it lawfully, knowing this, that the law is not made for righteous persons, but for the lawless and the insubordinate, for the ungodly and for the sinners, for the unholy and profane, the murderers of fathers, the murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for fornicators, for sodomites, for kidnappers, for liars, for perjurers, and if there is any other that is contrary to sound doctrine, according to the glorious gospel of the blessed God, which is committed to my trust. Now, this is interesting because what I believe Timothy is saying here is that all of us fit in those categories. Just be honest. Somewhere in that little list of sinful people, you're there, and I am too. Just admit it, or past at least. But when you're filled with the Holy Spirit, it gives you this pure heart to recognize, wait a second, the law of God says don't do this, so we shouldn't do that. The law of God says don't fornicate, so don't fornicate. The law of God says don't murder, so don't murder. The law of God says don't lie, so don't lie. Like it's understanding that there is a need for the law. We are all in need of a law because the law, especially, not just the law of Moses, but the 10 Commandments as well. These are very important that we instill into our hearts because understanding the law helps us to open our eyes and see our sinful nature. Because let's just face it, most sin doesn't necessarily hurt your neighbor. It breaks the laws of God. So we have this, I'm not hurting anybody when I commit adultery. Well, I'm not hurting anybody when I fornicate. I'm not hurting anybody when I curse God. I'm not hurting anybody when I lie. But the reality is it's you lack a pure heart. And when you lack a pure heart, you lack the Holy Spirit. Be very clear on that. Or at least a desire for a pure heart, like this understanding, well, wait a second, I ought not to do that because that violates the laws of God. Proverbs 22:11 says, he who loves purity of heart and has grace on his lips, the king will be his friend. Now just think about that for a second, because he's talking about God. Like he calls us friend. Like when you have a pure heart and you think on that, and you dwell on it, and you do your best to act on it, he calls us friend because he laid out the law. If you had I'm just trying to give a crazy example, like a hotel, and people came there and most of them obeyed the rules, but every now and then somebody would just trash the hotel room or disobey all the rules, whatever the rules of the house were. You wouldn't call them friend, and you definitely wouldn't invite them back. And it's that pure heart that helps you say, well, wait a second, I ought not to do this. James 4:8 tells us, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. In other words, quit celebrating your sin, recognize it, and say, wait a second, this is not good. You should have some sort of sadness and weeping involved with your behavior. And it is that purity of heart that the Holy Spirit gives us that allows us to see these things and to say, well, wait a second, there's a different way, because I see the law of God, and that shows me that there is a different way. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God.